Good afternoon and welcome to East Devon District Council's Extraordinary Audit and Governance Committee on 20th of February 2025. I'm your Chair, Councillor Chris Burrup. I would also like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm does go, please use the green signs to evacuate the building and assemble in the car park. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call and declaration of interests of committee members here present. Over to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Starting with yourself, Councillor Burrup.
I am present and I have no declarations of interest.
Councillor Davey.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Barlow.
Present, no declarations that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Bloxham.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Brown.
Present, no declarations.
Thank you. That's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. To agenda item 1, which is apologies.
So I have three committee apologies. That's Councillor Mike Goodman, Councillor Yehudi Levine and Councillor Charlotte Fitzgerald.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest we have completed. So move on to public speaking. We have nobody registered, I believe.
No.
Thank you. And I don't think we have any late items or matters of urgency either. So, and we have no confidential or exempt items either. So that's all the way through to agenda item 6, which is a statement of accounts of 23-24. And this is a report presented by Simon Davey, Director of Finance and Section 151 Officer, and Peter Barber from Grant Thornton. Welcome both. Who would like to go first?
There we go. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee. So, as the Chair said, this is an extra that follows on from the meeting last month and is here today essentially to ensure that we can complete the sign-off of the 23-24 financial statements before the end of February deadline. Just a bit of context from me. You'll recall that the meeting, 4 weeks ago at the end of January, I joined this committee via Simon's laptop and provided this committee with a verbal update on the status of the 23-24 audit. At that juncture, I explained that for a number of reasons, we had not been able to obtain sufficient assurance from our audit work over the balances and transactions within your latest set of accounts to be able to gain the assurance we needed to be able to sign off accordingly, and that regretfully we would be in a position for 23-24 where once again we would need to backstop the audit and issue a full disclaimer opinion, much along the lines of the opinions given by my predecessor back in December for 21-22 and 22-23. I explained that the full audit hadn't been completed and we decided in consultation with Simon as Section 151 Officer and the finance team in early January that we were not going to be able to conclude all the work and given the impending deadline of the end of February, that we would issue a summarised version of our audit findings report, and that is one of the reports you do have on today's agenda. So within today's agenda, you have a raft of Grant Thornton documents that I will talk you through, and importantly, you also have a link within those papers to the final set of 23-24 accounts that I am assuming today will be approved by this committee and will enable me to issue my opinion. I'm obviously not going to talk through the accounts. I think they've had a number of airings previously, but I will talk through the papers that you have from Grant Thornton. So I'll take them in order, and the first of those is, I've just shut down by mistake, my documents, so I'll just open it up again. But the first of those is commences on page 3 of your agenda papers, and is the final auditor's annual report for 23-24. So this is a report that you've seen previously in an interim form. It was brought to the late November meeting of this committee and had a very good airing. Lots of discussions about the content of this and the findings, the judgments, and in particular, the significant weaknesses identified and recommendations for the council. I wasn't, Chair, going to go into any detail on this report because essentially it is the same as that report that was discussed in detail in November. It was an interim at that stage because we weren't in a position to conclude our opinion work. As I said in my introduction, we are in that position now. So essentially, this is the same report that came in November with an updated date. And once I do give my opinion, hopefully next week ahead of the deadline, this will be a document that you will need to make publicly available on your website. So that's the first document, and it is quite a lengthy document. The next document within the pack commences on page 51, and I'll give you a second or two to find that within your paper pack. And this is the draft auditor's report that I intend to sign next week. And for those of you that did look at the auditor's reports from the prior years, you will see lots of similarities. But this is the document that will need to be added to your final set of accounts and will provide the reader with an outline of what work we've undertaken on the 23-4 accounts and what conclusions we've reached. Really importantly, within this document on the front page is the second heading down, which is the basis for disclaimer of opinion. And that basically indicates that we have not been able to gain that assurance for 23-24, and therefore we are not providing the reader with those assurances over the material accuracy of the accounts and those disclosures. That then takes me on to page 55 of your papers, which is a draft letter of representation. So immediately before issuing my disclaimer opinion for 23-24, I am required to ask management a number of questions. These would have been asked earlier in the audit process. This is a standard pro forma, so these questions in here and statements are standard questions we'd asked of any local government body, but in order to be able to give that opinion, that needs to be approved today and signed by the relevant individuals. And then the final document that you have within your pack that begins on page 59 is our audit findings letter. So if we had done a full audit and reached judgments, we would have issued what we call an audit findings report that would have gone into lots of detail about the work we've done, what we found, and any recommendations. Given that we haven't got to that position, this is a summarised version that summarises what we have done alongside other elements of audit that we have to discharge, including confirmation of independence, indicative fees, all that sort of stuff. So it is a very much briefer document than you would get if you had a full audit. What it does also do is set out the VFM findings in a bit more detail, but it also includes further down in Appendix B a bit more detail on the work that we've undertaken and the samples in particular that have been sent out and the status of those responses, where we've had responses in terms of level of assurance, just really to give this committee an indication of how close or otherwise we were to getting 23-24 over the line. I'm hoping that most of the detail within this letter is self-explanatory, but this report, along with all the other reports I've just spoken to, I'm more than happy to take any questions, Chair, on the detail.
Thank you, Peter. Before we go to questions, should we go to Simon? Yep.
Thank you, Chair. So we will, John, in a moment, if there's any questions for Peter, take us through the accounts, or just the actual accounts are being presented to you. But before we do that, I think it's just worth me highlighting the report I sent round. So at the last ANG, the committee requested the report went to council regarding 23-24 accounts. So that report is on the agenda, but that is subject to how this meeting goes. So it is draft from that point of view. But what that report does is set out perhaps some of the context in terms of the position of East Devon District Council, but also compared to other authorities in terms of the backstop position. So although it, as I explained at the last meeting, is disappointing that we're in a backstop, we are amongst a number of authorities in exactly the same position. Over half of local authorities' audits are likely to be backstopped. And that, to me, although we've got improvements to make as an authority, and that report highlights some of the areas that we need to work on, but also work very closely with Grant Thornton in terms of making sure we get this right going forwards. But it also indicates there is system error there. If you've got over half of local authorities who haven't had their accounts audited before the backstop, then there is an issue. And those issues that were present in terms of bringing in the deadlines are still there until elements are fixed. So in terms of the complexity of local authority accounts, the lack of accountants, the lack of auditors, key elements that are building up to that authorities aren't getting their accounts signed off. So I just need to put what aren't getting their accounts completely audited. So by bringing in a deadline is part of the answer in terms of the legislation, but it's not solving the problem. All you're doing is putting an arbitrary date that you then move on. Previously, you would keep going until your accounts were audited. And that's quite a change in my world, if you like. So it's just to highlight the national context. And we've already had discussions, as I said, with Grant Thornton about how we might make, well, how we will make improvements going forward, but also around the transparency for this committee in terms of a programme of works, so you can keep track of how the accounts and the audit are progressing, but also at our senior management team, ELT, as well. It will become a transparent programme of events that you can keep track on to make sure we're on target. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I'll take any questions. Yes, Councillor Bloxham.
Thank you. Can I ask Simon a quick question on the report that you just mentioned? And I can see that it's disappointing again this year, but I can also see that we're trying to resolve it going forward. It might just be my misunderstanding.
Or my typing.
Yeah. 2.3, the second paragraph, I can't quite make sense of it, and I don't know if there's some typos or grammar that's making me not able to understand that one.
Okay, so I mean, it's difficult because this isn't on your agenda. Sorry, it's difficult because it's not on your agenda, but I have mentioned it. So happy to cover it off if the chair's happy. So in 2.3 of the report, I'm highlighting some of the steps that we're taking to go forward. So was it a particular bullet point, or was it?
Yeah, it was the second one.
Auditors on working requirements, 24. Yeah, so basically what we get is a list of audit requirements annually in terms of what areas they're testing, what working papers they require from us. They get loaded up onto the particular system that Grant Thornton use. We have access to that. So it's a good way of controlling, if you like, the requests, the replies, and monitoring that. What we, in conversations previously, were saying that we can actually upload the requests now in terms of what's going to be required for 24-25. So we can start, as we produce the accounts, we can start preparing those papers in the format required very early, and we know what's required up front. So that was just an extra step that we could take, and Grant Thornton will agree to that sort of going forwards. So, okay.
Any other questions? Councillor Barlow.
Just on that point then, blimey. Just on that point then, have we done that? And are we progressing for the 25? I know we're talking about 23, 24 accounts, yeah? But I can't change the past. We've got to sign this off, so we can't change that. But are we confident that we have the managements of the different divisions that have got to give you this information going ahead? I think this is the bit we got last time. You weren't getting the right information in. So have we put the rule down to them that they've got to be doing it so that we know we're going to get this information in? Because otherwise, I don't want to be here this time next year doing the same thing, because I think there comes a point where we need to have an audited account, because otherwise we're guessing on guessing on guessing. And at the end of the day, it doesn't give confidence to anyone. So I just want to know that, you know, if I was doing this sort of thing, and I'm not an accountant, you'll be glad to know I can't help you, but if I was an accountant, I would want to have everyone was aware at this point, well ahead of the end of the year, everyone is aware of what they've got to do. And if they haven't done it by a certain date, in the real world, in my world, it would be, there's the door. You know, I don't want to be so serious, but this is so serious for us to understand where we are. I just want to be really assured that we are all over it.
Yeah, Simon, please.
Yeah. So I think that goes back to the point of having a clear plan that's monitored at ELT level. So that's not just what finance need to put in place, but what all the other areas of the council need to put in place and respond to. So there's ownership at that level. I think that's the answer to your question. I still believe there's some work there in terms of there's the real difficulty of having two key objectives of the council in the same timescale. So to be able to produce the budgets of the council, and you wouldn't want that not to happen, and produce the accounts of the council, or the audit goes through of the council, is happening at the same time. That gives us a real problem. We can try and work with Grant Thornton in terms of perhaps some of that key work can be done earlier, where we perhaps come unstuck. So perhaps we can get, well, not perhaps, we will get some elements done early, get them out, and with some help we can perhaps have some early audit. We've discussed some checks in April, early in the year, to get some of the more complicated stuff ticked off if we can. But we're always going to have that real difficulty of meeting those two key objectives at the same time with a small team.
Okay, thank you. Peter, I don't know if you've got any comments on that as well.
Yes, so Simon's covered the challenge of recruiting people to financial posts with the right skill set to produce accounts, produce the supporting working papers, and then support the audit process. So we have trailed at previous meetings of this committee some other challenges that existed in 23-24. There was an unfortunate set of circumstances with the key clients not going 4 or 5 weeks into the main audit. And this is a challenge across lots of particularly districts, where if you lose one key person, then you've not got the capacity to support the audit in their absence. So clearly there is that continued exposure. I know that I've been discussing with Simon about further recruitment, and I know the council is looking to recruit and further strengthen the finance team. It's one thing to put an advert out there, it's another thing to find the people with the right skill set. So we are discussing the art of the possible, and Simon mentioned about some things we can do early, but clearly the most important thing for you as a council, and for you as this committee, those charged with governance, is to make sure that the accounts are produced in a timely manner, because clearly one of the challenges historically has been having those accounts available in accordance with the deadlines. So the deadline is the end of June for the accounts this year. That has to be the priority, to get it right first time, to make sure that there's proper quality assurance in place. I think it was September last year, and there was a number of reasons for that.
August, I think you'll find.
Sorry. August. And there was one particular reason around that in terms of council dwellings and valuations. But clearly we will not embark on any work on a set of accounts until we've got a full set of accounts, supported by full set of working papers, and Simon's mentioned that previously. We are planning to start the work mid-September. And that is later than we start a number of other audits, because we have, as a firm, 39 audits in the Southwest. We will start 23 of those late June, and those are the ones that have a track record of delivering an audit. And we absolutely do prioritise those, because then if we didn't, we run the risk of not getting any audits done. Some of those audits are districts, and some of them will be done within 2 months, 2.5 months. Those that are most able to support an audit and have that track record can get an audit done in 2.5 months. We will be starting here later, but what we are discussing is what could be done even before you produce your draft accounts. Things like the bank reconciliation, which is one of the areas that we've highlighted as something that absolutely needs to be prioritised, that you are able to provide a bank rec that we are comfortable with. The critical date for the bank rec is the end of the year, the 31st of March. So we will be looking to liaise with finance staff to see what is the art of the possible in terms of getting us a bank rec that we can look at in April, which would clearly go some way. We will be discussing things like property, plant and equipment and council dwellings, and engage with you earlier about how you're instructing your valuers to make sure that they are fully prepared to produce the valuations and support the detailed challenges that we will inevitably raise with them once we start the detailed work. So there will be a number of things that we will be looking to do with the council to put both parties in the best position. But it is a big challenge and it is a big ask, and the ability to support the audit will be influenced by ensuring that you retain your people in the finance team and arguably further strengthen that team to support not just the audit, but all the other things, including the budget process that Simon alludes to, that they have to do on an ongoing basis as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, yeah. Ian?
Thank you. But by starting in September, are you not adding to the problems though? Because by starting in September, that surely is putting huge pressure on Simon when the budgets do then have to, he's got to start working on them then. So although you're picking on the ones you know you can get through in June, that's great, but we're the ones that need help. Shouldn't you be starting with us and leaving them till later?
Well, we are, who are we accountable to? We're accountable to a number of people, but we are contracted to do the work with public sector audit appointments. And they set us a number of targets to sign off a certain amount of audits as a minimum every year. And as you would expect, we prioritise our work based on those that offer the opportunity to get the most over the line by the deadline. September is still absolutely deliverable with the right evidence and support. The deadline is the end of February. Again, my absolute aspiration would be that it's done before Christmas. And that happens elsewhere with the right support, with the people with the right skills, focusing on the audit, supporting the audit process, providing timely responses to queries. That is absolutely deliverable in other places. We need to make sure it's deliverable here.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair. So these ones that get it completed on time, it's definitely doable, that done it by Christmas. Do they start in September or are they the ones that start in June?
They're the ones that start in June. We absolutely prioritise. I mean, we prioritise pension funds. So we have 6 of those in the Southwest because we have to, because without the pension fund work, we can't get the pension fund auditors to give the letter of assurance to every other council to get. But we do prioritise, absolutely. The remainder are those that have a track record of supporting the audit effectively. And we will be in and out of there as quick as we can to then focus on those that are less able to do that. And actually, this is one of the decisions this council needs to make. Does it produce its draft accounts at the end of June, which is the deadline this year? It was the end of May last year, which in my personal view is just completely unrealistic given the complexity of the accounts. End of June is what you've been tasked with by government, as has every other council, to produce your accounts. You need to make a judgment as to whether you're going to, that is 1A deliverable, and if it is, are you going to produce them then, or are you going to build in any more or further quality assurance checks, etc., to make sure that you get it right first time, because if you've got those accounts that are fully supportable and you're confident in the numbers, when we get the working papers, there shouldn't be as many queries. The problem is in the current year is that we've had lots of queries go out because the information we've had back hasn't provided us with enough confidence over those disclosures. And once you start getting into a process of back and forward, it can be incredibly time consuming for both parties.
One final point, question to Simon. Would it be helpful if the auditors were coming in earlier rather than waiting until September? Would it give us more chance of getting our accounts properly audited?
Through the chair, I think that's an obvious answer, isn't it? You're creating a deadline and so many months to do something. If you've got a longer period, clearly it helps.
I think it's probably fair to say, though, we are in danger of being in a vicious circle. So we are, the complexity of the audit grows with every year that we fail to achieve one. So the depth and the depth of questioning has to go back further and further each year for every year that they can't be assured of the starting position. And that's where we're at right now. This is the third consecutive year where we failed to complete an audit. And I think the Appendix B is the item that I'd like to refer you to now, which is the status of audit testing. And if you look at this, and I don't suggest we go through it in any detail, but there are only 2 items on there, and there might be 20, I haven't counted them, there might be 25 or 30 items of testing. There are 2 items where we have assurance out of 25 or 30. So it's not like we're close, we're a long way off. And we need, collectively, to put our heads together in this time now as to how we spend the next 12 months productively getting that, and in reality, to take your point, are we going to be sat here in 12 months' time? If I'm a betting man, we are. But are we going to be much closer to gaining, definitive assurances, potentially in the areas where, we want to focus the audit and have assurances in the audit? So we might not do 100% of this, but what are the areas that we want to achieve? Bank rec, property valuation, and by that I mean let's look at where the value is, so let's focus on might be top 20% of properties, but it might account for 70% by value. So if we can get that done, that's a big tick in terms of assurance for us as a committee. What is this process for? It's to assure us as a committee, it's to assure the members of the public and users of the account in the validity of our financial numbers. And if we don't have those assurances coming through, not even to a degree, then we should be worried. But if we can start to get those assurances and the principal controls assured, then we can start to have some element of relief, if you like. So I'll come to you in a sec, Ian. In terms of timing then, starting in September to the end of February. Now it doesn't really run to that. We want to see it completed within the 3 months of September, October, November, 4 months, September to December. So we've got 4 months to do it. We've got a couple of months after that, technically, but actually in reality, we don't have that because the resources aren't there. They're cast elsewhere. People take holidays. They've got to plan them somewhere when you're busy auditors. So in terms of compression, we've got 4 months to achieve an audit. Some of December is, half of December's gone as well because of, you stop in the middle of December. 25, 26, if I'm correct, we've only got 3 months. So actually it's got to be completed by November 26. So, you know, if we can't do it next year, the following year, we've got no chance whatsoever. It's just going to get harder and harder with these arbitrary deadlines. So, you know, the complexity is one thing. Both Simon and Peter have touched on some of the issues that we are facing. One is resilience within the accounts department. So, you know, that's easy to say and it's easy to criticise, but it's very difficult to fix. Statutory accounting is a very specialised subject. It comes up once a year, and then you are tested through you know, the auditors test that, but it's a very specialised subject and it's very different to accounting for day-to-day activity, management accounting, if you like, and the sorts of reports that we as a council rely on a day-to-day basis. They're critical because we need to know what our spend is on the HRA so that we're not overspending. If we just prioritise all our resources on stat accounting, we're going to go out of control, and we don't want that on a day-to-day basis. So personally, prioritise day-to-day, but stat accounting is, you know, it's a unique beast, and having professionals in your organisation whose sole responsibility is doing the stat accounts and then audit queries is extremely difficult in smaller organisations, in my opinion. So getting resilience there, where you're not just relying on one, maybe two people, is extremely hard. Planning, you know, the learning from this year, in my opinion, is we need to plan earlier, and we need to collectively, you know, I'm looking at John, I'm looking at Simon, Peter as well, collectively put our heads together now for the 24-25 audit, you know, and start thinking, as Peter's alluded to, what are the things that are obvious to us? What do we need to have completed by whatever dates? What can we be working on now, like the bank rec? We know it's a problem. It's been identified as a problem. We've got, you know, strictly speaking, we have 12 months to fix it. And there's no point in it coming up as an audit point in 6 months' time, or starting to wait for the questions to come in. We know it's a problem. We need to kind of fix that now and be working on that now. So planning, further support. Can we think outside the box as to where we could get further support from? We need to rack our brains, really, on where that could come from at a time that coincides with the budget. Neither will budge. The audit won't budge. We can't get GT to change the date when they start. So we can't get Bishop Fleming to take anything on. So that's not an option. So, you know, we are stymied for where we are. We have to work with what we've got. It's no good wishing that it was different. It's going to be what it is. It's going to coincide with budgets. One thing that Peter's alluded to personally to me is some of the best practice is where we have a coordinator. So GT have somebody to go to for all of the queries, and they take responsibility within EDDC for handling those queries and, you know, chasing them up in EDDC. So you have one point of contact, which, you know, again, so that argues against resilience, because if that person disappears or goes off sick, you're in trouble. But a coordinator gives, you know, means that there's somebody who's tasked with chasing up the audit responses that we're asking from other managers, and it's not just, you know, email blasting from a number of people and it just gets lost in translation. We need to, you know, have that conversation with that Peter's alluded to as to whether completing the accounts by the end of June target is, whilst it might be desirable, is it going to serve us the best? So, you know, I for one would rather have, and I've always been, this is something I've always said as a point of principle, it's pointless having bad information. I'd rather have information that's late but accurate. If you've got information that's early and inaccurate, you're going to make worse decisions. So ideally, and it's an arbitrary target, let's have the accounts by June. But if it takes us till the end of July and we're not going to get audited until September, take that time to get them right, is my personal view. So don't bust a gut to get the something out there that is incomplete, inaccurate, whatever you want to call it. But take that time, as I think you used the phrase quality assure, the information that's there. Because going with these accounts, I mean, 140 pages of accounts, behind there are files and files of backing documents. And all of that has to be put in place as well for the auditors, and then uploaded to the auditors for them to scrutinise. If we actually had 9 months of audit, would this have looked any different? I don't know if it would, because the quality of what we were providing was not up to it. We hadn't got the resources in place here to answer the questions, plus our audit fee would have been twice as high, because they charge by the hour. So, I don't think that's the answer. We need to get our ducks in a row for our accounts to be presentable and in a position to be audited. We know what's coming. We can see where it is. It's easy for me to pontificate and say, well, this should be simple. It's not, and I absolutely get that. But we've got to get our ducks in a row, and we've got to start working on it now. Ian.
Thank you. I heard everything you said then. My point is, this is not going to be done by Simon on his own, and you can't keep saying it's just our team that isn't doing it. It's a team effort. Everyone needs to change if we want to get this through. And by pulling forward, even if it's pulling forward to July, it's going to help Simon. I take your point about getting the right information in, but I was always told it was better. What was it? Better late than never is the thing. But better late than never. But then I was always told by a gentleman, better never late. So it's a matter of if you have a deadline, there is a reason for a deadline. And what you need to do is make sure the information coming at that point is correct. But if you start saying, don't worry, I'd rather it be good, but late, then straight away, then there's no pressure, and late it will be, because at the end of the day, no one's going to get something from it. So I'm just saying, look, this has to be a team effort. We have 9.5 months till the next time December comes round. There are things that have to be in. So, is this plan in place now? Do we know this coordinate? All these things, it's all very well waiting until April, May when we're going to start working this out, but we're wasting time. And again, I would say this is a team we need to work together by bringing forward perhaps an extra, even 2 weeks is going to help Simon to be able to get that thing, give him a bit of breathing space before he has to start working on the budgets when you have got staff there. I don't want to go on about this because obviously this isn't what we're here to talk about now. I just want to say that we can't be in this position next year. We need to find a way of getting through it, blue sky, however it is. But to do that, we need to be working on it now, not in a month or two's time.
Okay, I'll come to Simon in a second, just to respond to that in terms of where you think we're at now in terms of going forward, etc., and your feelings. I think, what was I going to say? Well, let's go to that right now. Thanks.
So really helpful debate. I can't disagree with any of it. In terms of where we are with the current accounts of 24-25, the timetable's done in that we're already in the process in terms of the actual production of accounts, although we were late for 23-24, it was for a specific reason to do with some software and the housing assets. Clearly, there could be something specific again coming up, so you've got to plan for those things. So we've got to improve our planning around that. But in terms of the production of the accounts, we were there or thereabouts in terms of on track. But I think it's the bit we've got to improve, and me and John have got to go back and look now in terms of these conversations, is although we've got the timetable, and it's quite a detailed timetable about how everyone in the organisation pulls together the valuations needed, by what dates, etc., etc. I think, and John might correct me here, we've got to put more emphasis on the the backing papers and the evidence as we're producing those accounts at that time. But I'll let John comment on that. And I think, which perhaps we haven't done before, in that we've relied on, okay, we know the auditors are coming in on this date, and perhaps we need to be more proactive working with the auditors about exactly what does that audit look like and what's required, and have a plan around that side as well, I think. But I'd be interested if you wanted to add anything, John, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, just to confirm, really, yeah. So the timetabling is up and running. We're already engaging with all the third parties that we need to. We're starting to collate those lists of even internally what other departments need to get involved and when we need that information. The team are currently attending relevant training and everything else, so there's no sort of year-end surprises coming our way. Any resources we can find, really. So we are taking sort of learnings from this year. So we are looking at those working paper requirements, because it's going to be a lot easier to produce those whilst we're putting the accounts together. We're picking up things like the disclosure checklist. So again, it's just to make sure that, you know, this is all allocated to the team, that we know what is needed up front. So it's, you know, all these elements are just hopefully going to add to that kind of managed approach to the audit. So yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thanks, John. Yeah, Councillor Blocks.
Thank you, Chair. You referred us to Appendix B in our papers, and far too often in Appendix B it talks about no evidence received and no response received. And I think I've got the answer to that now from what you've just said, but are you giving us the assurance that the team and everybody involved are putting things in place to take this seriously? That, you know, because to say no evidence was received and no response was received, it sounds like nobody bothered to reply. And it's, I know to me it sounds simple, and I get what you're saying that it isn't. But when you read that, it sounds, well, just somebody just didn't bother to reply then.
Yes, so no, it's not the case that no one's been bothered to respond. There is a debate we're having at the moment in terms of, so I've been through Appendix B, working with the team to literally go through line by line those elements to see what our response were, where we were, why we couldn't do it, and go through in that level of detail. I will question some of the statements in there about no evidence received, but that's part of the ongoing conversations that we need with Grant Thornton. So this is as captured, if you like, by one side of the equation. What we also need is our side of the equation and the learnings that come from that. And we've already picked up, as John's saying, some elements that, you know, we think we went back, not recorded here. Also, I think there's a switch around perhaps in terms of where we've used external professionals like the valuation office, etc., to produce our values that go into the accounts. We perhaps were of the mindset that they're the professionals, they're the ones that need to engage with the auditors if they've got questions. I think, and I might have got this wrong, but it's our accounts, it's the finance team's accounts, so they need to be the ones understanding and making sure that they can defend that position. But also, Grant Thornton have made it clear they don't want to be off trying to engage with other parties. They're coming to East Devon District Council. And I think that's a learning point for us in terms of that.
Okay. Thanks, Simon. Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I think this is mainly for Simon. Are we reasonably confident, therefore, that we can get this year's accounts ready by the end of June? And are we clear about what we could be, and you mentioned being proactive, and Peter's alluded to the kind of things that we could be a bit smarter about having ready. Are we reasonably clear about the things we could be doing in that interim between the production of the accounts in June and the auditors coming in September to make sure that we do have the kind of information that they're going to ask for on day one, so we can go, yep, got all that ready, here it is. And we're not going, oh, right, yeah, well, we'll start looking for that.
So I think the conversation has been around that in terms of there are clear areas whereby where we've come unstuck this year, in particular the bigger areas on the balance sheet, if you like, to provide that data early, but also the offers there, I believe, in terms of some of the key ones, we can get testing early on those, so that we can almost tick them off before the audit comes in. So there's that element to it. Also, and it's again a conversation that I know John's had with the team, is around the assurance within the team, so that we've got double sign-off on elements in terms of what the working papers should be going forward. Also, we have got, and it is difficult, we talked about recruitment, so as well as a specific statement of accounts accountant, we have also got within our establishment a principal accountant role, which is quite a high role, that also looks after the statement of accounts. So we've got some cover now in terms of our establishment of how the statement of accounts, so that we can have a big part of the team working on working on the budgets, but we can have clear responsibility for at least 2 people for our statement of accounts. Problem is we can't recruit to that role, even though it's quite a highly paid role. We've been out to agencies, Penna, who are the big name in terms of trying to get someone in, and we literally cannot recruit. So it's how we then take that forward in terms of that post. So there are some other ways we might be able to fill that. One is sharing with other authorities who are better than us in this area. So can we, that every local authority is strapped for cash. If we can give you some money, can we second some staff in to help us? Another area I was thinking about this morning, and I haven't actually discussed with John yet, is actually we could contract elements out. So you could use other companies other than Grant Thornton to help us produce certain elements of the accounts, or oversee certain elements of the accounts, produce the working papers. At least then you've got a firm that has the resource that's outside your normal day-to-day working requirements. So I think that's another way I'm going to explore as well.
Okay. Peter, did you want to come in on that, or are you
I mean, only to say that, I'm committed, as Simon is and the rest of the finance team, to doing whatever it takes to get in the best position to give us the best chance to get this work over the line. All these suggestions seem eminently sensible, and I think what it is now is a case of getting together, having a discussion about this in more detail, going into some of the minutiae, and looking to actually ensure that these arrangements are in place as soon as possible to make sure we are progressing periodically and moving along and seeing progress. What we need to avoid is a situation where, 2 weeks would pass and there was no progress made. And why is that? And making sure that we need to understand that and ensure that it doesn't happen again. But the issue about the capacity, the issue is, as you say, Simon, it is, you've got that post there, but we know now, don't we? I very much hope you can find somebody and they work out perfectly, but we need a plan B or a plan C, don't we, if that doesn't materialise? And, you've mentioned a couple of ideas. There may well be others, I don't know, but I think you need to explore all options. It is interesting, the one about other firms, because there are other firms that undertake, I think there's 6 or 7 of us firms that cover the whole of the public sector. Public sector accounting is very specialised. You cannot bring in, or it doesn't normally work very easily to bring in somebody from the commercial sector when they're dealing with collection funds, housing revenue accounts, and a comprehensive income expenditure account that bears no resemblance to a P&L. So you need that specialist local government code expertise. There are lots of people out there that are employed by other councils that are being fought over. So everybody's fishing in the same pond. There are a lot of firms out there that do audits of other councils that do have experience from an audit perspective. Now, whether it's possible to transition them into accounts production and supporting work is an interesting potential option, isn't it, to throw into the mix.
Great, thank you. Ian?
Yeah, I just wonder if there is anything that this committee can do to help you in this. And I just wonder that perhaps one of the rules should be that if you've asked a question and you haven't had an answer within a week, then you come back to us to say, because at the end of the day, you know, there must be other places to put pressure, because, you know, reading your, was it B, your appendix B, it reads, as you say, and I'm sure it's not the case, I'm sure that someone's written back going, I'll get back to you, or whatever, there is some response, but it's not the right response. And it's not just your department, it's the legal department, it's the leases, which I'm sure is Tim's department, whatever. So there's all these different departments that are doing it, that are all got things to do on their day. They don't sit around waiting for you to ask them questions, but it's really important to the council as a whole. And can we call people in and say, right, we want, instead of just you here, the heads of these departments in to say, why aren't you?
So there was a question there, believe it or not, which was, is there anything we can do to help? Pete?
I'm just going to pick up on that point with regard to, you know, if we hadn't had a response in a week, then somebody needs to be chasing that. That's one of the roles for the coordinator potentially, but also the software we use where we make our requests for evidence. It has a target date for response, so it's quite easy within the software to identify those that have gone beyond their expected return date. And you know, I think myself and Simon are of the view that that's something that we need to be keeping a lot of closer eye on, hold each other to account on in terms of why. Yeah. And there will always in every audit be slippage in certain areas, but then often in other audits that work very well, you know, we have a week for the response and we get it the following day.
Okay, thanks for that. In terms of Ian's point, you know, is there anything else that we can do as a committee to help?
The debate has helped, and whether there's further discussions rather than the committee arena in terms of the chair's obviously got some ideas, good ideas, other ideas have come out here. So I think further discussions might be useful, just to, you know, let's use the skills of members to help in this. Also, I think from the governance point of view, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think you ought to have a regular update through the audit of how it's progressing, so that you have clear oversight of it.
So, standing item, please, Amanda, on future audit committees. We have quarterly audit committee meetings. If everyone's happy with that, I'd like to propose that we have a standing item on there for the foreseeable future, entitled audit, external audit progress. Yeah, is everyone happy with that? Yeah, so, I mean, John and
yep, over the moon, chaps.
I don't see anybody else looking to ask any questions, so if there aren't, I will point out that Councillor Mike Goodman couldn't be here. He sent his apologies, as we know. He has sent through a number of written questions which have been circulated in advance to both Peter and Simon, and they have put written answers to them. I will go through them if committee wants me to, but for brevity, what I suggest is that they are attached to these minutes, if you're happy with that, and we'll have written answers to Councillor Goodman's questions. Is everyone happy with that? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Okay, thanks. You'll see them in the minutes as they are circulated. Thank you. One further point from me. Even if we had completed the audit satisfactorily, we would have had a qualified audit on this for this set of accounts. Okay, so that is because we would have started off with the principle of we don't know what the opening balances should have been because we didn't have an audit last year. So we transpose that 12 months time, we're going to have at best a qualified audit in 12 months' time, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the best we can do now, okay? What we don't want is a disclaimed audit, if we can avoid it. I'm not sure if that's possible, because the way that the valuation of property goes through is we rotate the valuation of property over a 5-year cycle. And if we haven't got assurances for all of those years, then you never get to the point, or potentially never get to the point where you are 100% certain about the valuations. So I don't know if we can, you know, get to that.
About that, yeah.
But yes, Peter.
Yeah, if I can just pick up on that very point, because you're absolutely right. But obviously, I think you alluded to it, Chair. You know, if you've got 150 assets and you're doing 30 of them every year, it will take 5 years, in theory, to get that assurance over the totality of them, because under the code, they're required to be valued at least every 5 years. But actually, if they're worth 50 million and you did the top 30 by value, and that's 40 million, then you've got 80% of the assurance in 1 year. And then, you know, you could work on that premise. And that's why one of the things I no doubt myself, Simon and John will be having a chat about is, you know, I'm not going to tell you how to instruct your valuer, but given that you've had backstop audits for the last 3 years, I don't know, you may well have done that historically already, where you've targeted the bigger values, because ultimately you're trying to get assurance over the material accuracy of that. And therefore the logic is you would be valuing those bigger assets more often, because they are at greater risk of moving materially between the 5-year period, because it's a minimum 5 years, may do it more often. So that is a classic example about if you actually just go, right, we're just going to do 30 every year and cover them in 5 years, you're not going to have a clean opinion for 5 years. But you could change the profile of that and the number that you do to bring it forward earlier.
Great point, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Barlow.
Surely that's the sort of thing you should be telling us how to do our valuations. I know you're going to say that, but if that works for you, so that we can get to this is the teamwork I'm talking about. If you've got a secret squirrel way of doing something, then we need to know that, because otherwise we'll never get there if we're doing it, as you say, the way we've been doing it for all this time.
I mean, I can't remember whether it's done by value or whatever.
I can't
But I mean, but it's what a lot of councils do, you know, and they've done it because we're going into the detail here, aren't we? But that is exactly the sort of things where so I've got a number of other audits in the same position as this. I'm desperately trying to get done by the end of February, the deadline. But we've discussed, haven't we, Simon, about early March having a more detailed discussion about these and other things, because things like how you bring in valuers as management experts to value your property, because they are the experts, they're RICS qualified. But actually, if you're not being very clear and explicit about what you expect from them, you know, we have some audits where we get the valuation report and we have some queries, and then we go back to the valuer and they say, well, we didn't know that was part of our role to answer questions from the auditors through the council. So the expectation that, you know, when you're appointing your valuers is to provide you with information that enables you to produce your accounts, but also an expectation that if there are any questions from the auditors, you need to be working with us to explain and give decent answers to give them the confidence over the valuation. And that's exactly how it works. And that's not universally done.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, we move to the recommendation of our agenda, which is to adopt the 2023-24 Statement of Accounts and delegated authorities given to the Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee and the Director of Finance, Section 151 officer, to sign when all matters are concluded. And also that the letters of representation can be approved and signed by the Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee and the Director of Finance, Section 151 officer. If everyone's happy, we'll take both those recommendations in one go. Is everyone happy for us to do that? Yeah, I mean, I'm just seeing if we can take them all in one go first. But if everyone's happy with that, yeah, can we have a proposer for those recommendations, please? Councillor Bloxham, thank you, and seconder, Councillor Collins, thank you. In that case, all those in favour of those recommendations? That is unanimous. Thank you. Okay. So that brings us to an end, or brings to an end our agenda. It's a one-item agenda. Well, it's not quite. It's 7 items. I think. I don't know how we quite get one item from 7, but anyway. So I'd like to thank everyone for taking part. I think it's a useful, well, it's an essential debate actually. The 20th of March is our next A&G meeting or instalment, if you want to call it that. So look forward to seeing as many people as possible at that. In the meantime, so I wish you all happy travels. Thank you very much.